Testing my volume. Can I get a response?
I hear you.
Thank you.
I see Chris in a box, but there are two Chris's. I don't know why I'm not showing up. This is Chris Winchester, by the way.
Chris Winchester, when you're talking, the box that says just the name Chris lights up, so I think that's you.
Okay. I'm confused as to why I can see faces, but mine is not there.
On the bottom of your screen, on the bottom left-hand side, there's a mute button and a video button. If you click on the video, it should face up.
Aha! Thank you.
You're welcome. There you are. Hi.
Good afternoon.
Looks like we got a lot of people logging in. I do already know of one person who won't be able to attend, Jerry Reed. But it looks like we're 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So we're still missing 4 people. And that includes Jerry. I'll just give it another minute or so.
Counselor, I had Amy Kelly say that she would not make it, and I got an invite decline from Jerry Hall.
From who?
Jerry Hall on the admin committee.
Oh, her last name is Reed.
Reed, sorry. Yep.
Yeah. And she's the one who sent me an email that she's not feeling good and wouldn't be able to attend. So, what time is it? 4:02. Well, why don't we get started? And if more people pop in, that's great.
So either.
If everyone wants to click on your mute button, and then what we'll do is, as we're called on to speak, we'll just unmute ourselves in order to speak, and that should help reduce the amount of feedback that we get. But we'll start out by welcoming everyone. Thank you for volunteering to be on this committee and for being here today specifically. But I'd like to go through the roster, and I'll just call on people one at a time, and you'll introduce yourself and briefly describe your favorite hobby. We'll start with Trudy Hammond.
Hi, Trudy Hammond, and I operate the Animal Safety Center in Oakridge, and I serve on a few other committees, and I'd like to welcome everyone.
Thank you, Trudy. And Brian Cutchin.
Hi, Brian Cutchin, City Administrator, and a hobby is I look after children with emotional problems when I can and help.
Interesting. We have Chris Harder. It looks like we do. Chris, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Chris Harder. I'm a retired deputy fire marshal and paramedic out of Klamath County Fire District. When I did work for the city for a while. Now just pretty much just retired after retiring from Eugene Urgent Care. I volunteered to be on this committee to see if I could do anything to help.
Thank you. And do you have a favorite hobby?
Yeah, if you look at my yard, you'll see some tractors and Volkswagens out there that I'm restoring at this present time. So anyway, I do that, and I do have a shop that I work in there at my house. So I'm busy.
Cool. All right, thank you for being here. Next would be Chris Winchester. Go ahead and click. Chris, I see you might be talking, but you're still muted and we can't hear you. Down in the bottom left corner. Okay, I saw, oh, they're logging in again. So I'm going to move on to someone else and I'll come back. Next would be Jan
I'm here.
Christensen.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yeah. Hi, Chris. I'll be right back to you, okay?
Okay, fine.
Jan Christensen.
Hi, Jan Christensen. I serve on the Budget Committee volunteer also, and I'm gonna see if I can help in this department too. My hobbies, I have too many to list, but I'm plagued with, I can't get to them because I have 2 cats and they own the room that all of my stuff is in. So I'm kind of waiting for a she shed to happen in my yard. So if somebody can move out there, me or the cats.
Good idea. Thanks for being here. So we'll go back to Chris Winchester.
As you'll see, computers and technology are not my forte. I moved here to Oakridge 2 years ago from Eugene, where I moved from North Carolina 5 years ago. My internet connection is unstable, so if I disappear, that's what my screen is telling me. I lucked into a house that has raised beds, and so I guess my newest hobby is being a farmer. I never had time for a garden when I worked, but now that I'm retired, I'm loving having to learn how to do all this stuff. One of my careers way back, I was a baker and a caterer, and I've amassed a bunch of recipes. So my current winter project is to cull it down and create a cookbook for my kids.
Neat. Well, thanks for being here, and I'll go on to Jan Hooker.
Can you hear me?
Now I can.
Okay, I'm Jan Hooker, and I will just go right to my favorite hobby, which is watching our 18-month-old great niece who wears us out. I'm on the budget committee and just kind of want to help a little bit, whatever I can do.
Excellent. Thanks for being here, Jan. Next on the list is Matthew McNatt.
Hello. I'm relatively new to Oakridge, but enjoying homeschooling my children part-time and taking hikes with them in the forest. And I also do online curriculum design and have a background in governance and business development.
Excellent. Thanks for being here, Matt. Do we have Rosa Suarez logged in? I don't see her name on my screen, so I'll pass. Next would be Sarah Altimus Pope.
Hi, everyone. Sarah. I am born and raised here in Oakridge and have lived here most of my life. And I'd say my favorite hobby would probably be trail running, something I try and do several times a week around here. And I think I'll take a moment just for the benefit of you guys that are not having good connection to let you know. I use Zoom a lot for my work these days, working remotely. And down by your screen in the lower left-hand corner where there's the audio button, if you see that little arrow next to it, you can click on that and it gives you the option to switch to phone audio. And you can call in on your phone. And if you put that code in, it'll link to your camera. And then just put your phone on speaker, run your phone like you normally do. And then as your bad connection cuts in and out with your video, it won't affect your ability to stay as part of the meeting. So that's a great hack I've been using a lot lately. I've been in Idaho quite a bit where there's really bad internet connection.
Yeah, Sarah, thanks for that information. Is the phone number handy? Maybe Brian knows or you know for people to call in?
Yep, if you click on that little icon, it'll give you a number personally for you. So it links to your screen.
Okay.
And then it won't cause the feedback that happens when you're trying to call in separately and run basically 2 different meetings.
Okay. Good to know. All right, so next I have Stan Yarborough. Is Stan in the room? I don't see on the screen. So I'm going to move to Sue Cathcart. I see that she's here. Hi, Sue.
Hi, I'm Sue Cathcart. I've been in the area about 5 years. My favorite pastime is being outside in any which way, and I have a background in public utilities and infrastructure. But, yeah, happy to be here. Thanks.
Excellent. Yes, thank you for being here. So the next thing on our agenda is to select a chair, a vice chair, and a secretary. But before we look at secretary, I wanted to mention that since Zoom meetings have come out and we're obviously all in one, and it is being recorded, I'm pretty sure that it's legal to not actually take minutes. Isn't that correct, Brian?
Yeah, that's correct. If you want to rely on just the video.
Okay, so we have a choice on that one. Do we want to have someone keep minutes in addition to the video? Or just simply rely on the video? Does anyone have opinions on that?
I'm not sure if we're using the hand raising feature or not, but I'll jump in and say I think minutes would be good. Not everyone in the community is going to have access to be able to watch that video. Only about 2/3 of our community have internet access, which means any minutes they're using online or on their phone and costing them. So I think probably just for better access for all of our community, minutes would be helpful.
I agree. And on that note, I think that just popping in to speak I'm comfortable with that if everyone else is as we move along through this, just like Sarah just did. But if someone else is speaking and you would like to speak next, using the raise your hand feature is a really good way for me to know and call on you. And how you access that, if you don't know, is down on the bottom of the screen towards the right. The last tab in the middle says reactions. And if you click on that, there's a raise hand feature, and it does what I just did. It puts a hand up to let us know that you want to speak. So if anybody wants to use that feature, feel free, and I'll make sure to call on you next, or actually whoever ends up being the chair would do that. So the next thing we'll move into is selecting a chair. Is there anyone here who's interested who would like to volunteer?
Just to clarify, this is for the subcommittee, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So it doesn't look like anybody's excited to be the chair. Does anyone want to nominate somebody to be the chair?
I have a question. I guess this comes first, is that we nominate the chair, but when you said subcommittee, is there a subcommittee to this committee, or is this a subcommittee to the city council?
Thank you. Good question. This is a subcommittee to the administration committee, which is myself, Trudy Hammond is on it, Amy Kelly, and Jerry Reed. Amy and Jerry are both not here right now. Oh, and of course, the city administrator. We are all on the administration committee, and the council asked this committee to form a subcommittee to do this project, which involves more people than what we had on our committee. So we're a little charter subcommittee is what we are.
And Councillor Kenyon, would you be willing to specify the role of the chair? What's involved in that? Is it primarily meeting facilitation, or are you looking to nominate for someone for a broader role than that?
Being a chair is what you just said, taking, being the person who runs the meeting and keeps it in order. So they would be preparing an agenda, and then doing exactly what I'm doing right now, is kind of taking the lead and etc. Are you interested in being the chair?
I do have experience being chairs for various committees. Most of my experience recently has been using a different way of conducting a meeting than Robert's Rules of Order. It's called sociocracy. So the way that I would chair might be a little different for people, but I'm open to doing that if people would like that.
Okay. I do know that because the council has adopted Robert's Rules of Order for the city of Oakridge, that's something that we do need to stick with. Are you suggesting that you wouldn't follow Robert's rules, or just that it's similar? And
there are similarities. But for instance, in Robert's rules, it's not usual to have rounds where each person is invited to speak. For a small subcommittee, in my experience, it's helpful to have each person have an opportunity to chime in to a proposal. The proposal formation process is also a little different, in that there are consistently two different rounds where people are invited to ask questions and to shape a proposal before a proposal is made. So Robert's Rules of Order comes from the military and then was revised by a Presbyterian minister for larger groups, and is very effective at moving things along quickly, but not necessarily surfacing all of the perspectives that someone who may not be as accustomed to speaking up, but still has something valuable to say, would like to share in a meeting. So as long as people wouldn't mind those, those modifications that I'm quite accustomed to, I'd be happy to do that.
excellent. Does anybody have any feedback on that? I can say I would be comfortable with those modifications.
I like the sound of those.
Yeah, absolutely. And even with
modifications.
Robert's rules, you can adjust them as needed for the size of group that you have. So I agree, a more open and collaborative process, especially something like this that's supposed to be citizen-led, makes sense. And yeah, Matthew, if you are willing to be chair, I think that'd be great.
I think that would be great as well. Would anyone like to nominate Matt?
Dawn, you cut out, but I think you asked about a nomination. I would nominate Matt.
Excellent. Do we have a second?
I'll second that, Jan Christensen.
Thank you. I'll call her. Or actually, to save on time, it might be best to say all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And
I,
do we have any nays? Hearing no nays, Matthew is our chair. And so Matthew, would you like to take over from here and select our vice chair?
Sure. Is there a specified role description for the vice chair that is envisioned for this committee?
Thank you. It is actually someone who would take over if the chair was not able to be present. So they would just fill your shoes. If you're not able to make it to a meeting, you would contact them ahead of time and let them know, and they would just run the meeting.
Sounds great.
Do we have anyone interested or anyone want to nominate someone for vice chair? Oh, I'm so sorry, Matt. Let me step back.
So, yeah, is there anyone interested in being vice chair?
I will if no one else steps forward, but I sure would encourage other folks to, and I'm balancing a pretty busy schedule. So yeah, if needed, same goes for secretary, but encourage others too.
well, I would nominate Sarah Altemus Pope for our chair, vice chair. Sorry. I think you have a good voice. You're well-rounded and a lot of knowledge, and I think you're both good people to be in those positions.
Do we have a
Okay.
second?
Thanks. And I just respond, I will, as long as Matt, you try not to miss any meetings.
Yes, don't miss any meetings. I'll second that.
I didn't catch who the second was there.
Oh, it's Dawn Kenyon.
All right, sounds good. And does anyone else want to? Sarah, I know that you said you will if no one else does. Just wanted to give a little bit more opportunity if someone says, "Hey, that is me." That way you don't have too much on your plate, Sarah. If someone is wanting to step forward,
I would step forward as well, with the interest that I'm not the secretary. And so
I'll second that.
okay. So this is a great example of where there's a difference between the protocols.
Okay.
I know in Robert's Rules of Order, I have a dog that's barking. Sorry about that. In Robert's Rules, we would look at the first proposal that's on the table. Sarah, how are in a more informal way? How are you feeling about? You said you'd second Sue's nomination. Does that feel good to you to move forward with that proposal?
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually looking at her screen, wondering if I should just nominate her, so she'll do it. So I think that sounds great if everyone else agrees.
Okay, then I'll just move forward with that proposal. There's a proposal for having Sue Cathcart as our vice chair. Everyone in favor of that? Aye.
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 And any nays? Okay, hearing none. Sue, you're now the vice chair for the meeting. And now for secretary. Do we have anyone who wants to be secretary? Since we're doing video recordings, one way to do the minutes would just be to take a note of some timestamps where someone could easily find a section of the meeting and then just note conclusions. So this is the conclusion that we came to. This is the conclusion we came to. And if you want to see discussion, it's at this timestamp. That can simplify a secretary's role when there is the video recording, and that's a way to an idea. Yes, Councillor Kenyon.
And I would mention also that when this video becomes available on YouTube, you can actually click on a thing and it'll give you the whole entire transcription, and all the timestamps are right there with it. You could copy and paste that right over into a Word document and then do exactly what Matt was just mentioning with the timestamps, mentioning only, or, you know, maybe subtract the book conversation and leaving just the times with the salute or the motions.
So hearing that possibility for less work, if one is comfortable with the technology behind it. Does anyone have an interest in being a secretary for our group?
I would.
I'm seeing Jan Christensen that you would have an interest in being secretary. So it's great. Does anyone else have an interest in fulfilling that role? And Jan, I'm not seeing you on a screen, so just confirming that you don't have anything to say. Oh, you're on. Jan Hooker. Sorry, I'm not seeing you on screen. Just wanting to make sure you don't have anything to chime in here.
No, I'm having to use another computer, so next time I'll have my face plastered on it too.
All right. So we'll wait a few more seconds and then I'll call for a motion.
If it hasn't been seconded, I will second that.
I'm not sure the motion has actually been made yet. I was just taking a round of, is anyone interested in doing this?
Right. Sorry about that.
No worries. Okay, so we do have interest from Jan Christensen. Does anyone want to make that motion for secretary?
I'll move that Jan Christensen fulfill the secretary position.
Okay, so Sarah Altimus Pope, thank you for that motion. And Councillor Kenyon, were you wanting to second that?
Sure.
All right, so we have a second from Councillor Kenyon. And everyone in favor of that? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any nays? Okay, hearing none, motion passes. So we have those three roles selected for our subcommittee. And now review committee code of conduct and public meeting procedures. I believe that you would be the one responsible for this agenda item, Councillor Kenyon.
Yeah, I wanted to mention that I'm looking over my notes. We do have a code of conduct. It's resolution 18-2015, but I could not actually find the code of conduct document in order to email that out. Is that something, Brian, that you would be able to email out to everyone?
Yes, I'll email it out to the entire committee.
Okay, and what it is it's a resolution that the council adopted for how we will conduct ourselves during meetings. Just basic common courtesy, but it's a lot longer than that in written form. And we'll need everybody to sign that and then get it back. Or Brian, is it a fillable form online or is it a document?
It can be fillable, so I'll make it so.
Okay. That'll be wonderful. And then we also have a volunteer form Brian, I wanted to know if we need to have that form filled out for this committee, or is the application that we all, or that everyone signed, is that in lieu of the standard volunteer form?
No, there's other parts, so I'll have to send out the form for each of the board members.
Okay. So those will be coming in our emails, and we'll just want to get them read and signed and sent back to Brian. And/or fillable form is a lot easier, and he's going to work on that. And then the next thing that is serial meetings. Is everyone here with what serial meetings is? Does anyone want to know what serial meetings are?
That would probably be a good thing to cover just as a matter of the public record, Councilor Kenyon. Would you be willing to speak to that?
Right, I have to make a couple adjustments on my screen to pull it up, because I have it on, see, exit full screen. Okay, so I'm reading from the State of Oregon Department of Justice website, and it says serial communications is a governing body risks violating meetings laws through a series of private communications, even if a quorum isn't involved in any single communication. So we have a group that's size is 14. I would be a non-voting member, so 13, and actually Brian's also a non-voting member, so 12 of us are on the committee, and then 7 of us would be what would make a quorum for voting. So where did I leave off over here? So even if a quorum's not involved, like 7 of us are not meeting out on the side somewhere, you can have what's considered a serial meeting by, like, maybe you meet with Sarah and Jan over coffee and you talk about something that we're working on in this committee. And then maybe Sarah goes over to Matthew's house for another reason and starts discussing the same things that she's already discussed with the other 2. Then that becomes 4 people. And then if any one of those 4 talks to someone else on the committee, then it turns into a serial meeting, and that's not allowed, because it's like we're forming decisions together outside of public view. So I'll go ahead and finish reading what it says in this document, but I wanted to clarify that. For example, the Court of Appeals held county administrators emails and phone calls with various board members deliberating towards the resolution could be a violation. No email or phone call involved a quorum. The court explained that the determinative factors are whether a sufficient number of officials are involved, what they discuss, and the purpose for which they discuss it, not the time, place, or manner of their communications. While the Supreme Court reversed the Court of Appeals decision, it did not resolve the issue of whether serial communications can violate the law. As noted above, we recommend that member governing body should not meet in private to discuss business or exchange communications about business, even if those involved constitute less than a quorum. So that I want to cover about serial meetings.
And
that's all I had, Matt.
Councilor Kenyon, the 2 key attributes there, if I'm not mistaken, it doesn't need to be that there's a decision being made. It's simply that there's deliberation going on and that it's private. And that if that's happening, if the private deliberation is happening in a series or sequence, then enough of the people could be added up outside of the meeting to form a quorum in the meeting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
So the goal is to have all of our discussions about the project that we're working on to be available to the public. And that's why we build meetings and we try and do all the business inside the meetings.
Sorry, I'm getting a little bit of delay here and I'm not sure if it's me, but I'll add in here. I think keywords are deliberating. And so I don't think we should discourage people from sharing good information, such as the resources that have already been sent to us, examples of what other cities are doing and whatnot. That's good information to share. It's the responding back with, I think that. That's when you're starting to deliberate. So it's just folks need to be careful about that. And then I'd also add, I think you need to be very careful about doing the same thing on Facebook and on community forums on Facebook. And this could even include commenting on somebody else's I think that. Is you letting people know what your opinion is, and that happening outside of our meeting. So that's just another thing that you should be careful about.
I'll second that.
And that is in no small part, if I'm understanding correctly, Sarah, because Facebook is not public. It's not readily available for anyone to access.
Yeah, and this isn't a settled matter necessarily by law, but it's just it definitely is a gray area that's being currently litigated, and it's just bad form. So I think we just keep the business of the committee in committee meetings. But please, I don't want people to feel like they shouldn't share good resources that are out there, and we can find ways to make those public as well. But.
And Councillor Kenyon, one of the resources that I had mentioned and you had replied to about via email, I'm not sure where that is in discussion with the city's lawyer, but it's the potential of using a tool like Lumio, which will allow for public deliberation that is asynchronous between meetings. Keeping it always public and never making any conclusions or decisions outside, as a way of expediting our committee's work so that we have a chance of having any proposals that we make about the revisions to the town's charter, or rather to the city's charter, be available in time for that to go to the voters for the upcoming election. Funds are obviously tight in our city, and we may not have the resources to even run an election outside of that cycle. So we're working with a window of time for actually making any substantive revisions. Can you give our subcommittee, Councillor Kenyon, an update on where that possibility is, please?
Yes, absolutely. I asked Brian to add it to the agenda for tomorrow night's city council, and the council will discuss and make a decision if we feel that this committee should an option with the city attorney, because it could potentially end up costing quite a bit for the research and the official opinion. So that's a council decision. And as soon as I know that decision, I'll definitely know and the group know. However, we'll move forward after we have that answer.
And can I respond here, Matt? I looked at the resource you sent, and I know where you're going with this. I'm serving on the Lane County advisory committee for the Climate Action Committee. And so what we've been doing is using Google, and it's open. So that way, when we are working on drafting things, we can do that business in between meetings. We're not deciding on what final stuff is going to be, but it's open source. So that might be another way that we can, without having to have some kind of subscription, be able to do that work. And then the city has the ability to make it open source, or if people want it, they can have it. But just, again, not deliberating in those documents, but doing group editing and also having a folder to put all these resources in, I think could be another really useful tool.
Yeah, so my request had been, I like Lumio because it threads the conversations and is possible for very easy public access. But whatever tool facilitates asynchronous work and remains public, I'm fine with, and would love to see us adopt something like that. So Councillor Kenyon, would you mind resharing your screen, please, so that we can see the remainder of the agenda?
Actually, that's Brian's screen that's doing that, I believe.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, so we have the review timeline and meeting schedule. I have a reminder that that's strawberry yogurt. Councillor Kenyon, yes.
I wanted to interject something that I should have mentioned sooner, but Sarah Altimus Pope actually sent in a request for an item to be added to the agenda that has to do with, where did I write that down? Well, anyway, I think it would fit in good here. And I wonder, Sarah, could you, it had to do with whether or not this is an appropriate time for this committee.
Yeah, and I actually see that, Dawn. I thought it was the review actual charter doesn't need to be updated. Kind of that discussion, that resource that was shared out about charter commissions that asked those questions right up front. And I was just hoping we would have some of that discussion. So I am going to probably need to jump off here pretty quick. I have a previous conflict. So I think I would like to talk about the meeting schedule because I will have a regular occurring conflict. And then we can maybe go on to the other stuff for a minute before I jump off.
Okay.
Sounds good. The meeting schedule, Councillor Kenyon, I believe you were the one who arranged the time with having seen input from everyone. Would you be willing to speak to that agenda item?
Absolutely. So really what happened was the administration committee, when we got everyone's applications for the committee, we could see that, a few people had put specific times that they weren't going to be available due to vacations. And most people put, like, I'm open in the evenings after whatever time. So we reviewed that together in our committee and then discussed whether or not we should have this meeting back to back with our regular administration committee meeting, and no one wanted to do that. So we looked at the calendar of the city schedule and saw that the third Wednesday of every month was open and no one had a conflict of their applications with that. So, and then I think, if I'm remembering, pick the time just because it's the exact same time as our meeting is. And we didn't see any conflicts for that. So that's how we chose it. The committee who's sitting here right now actually didn't take part in that conversation other than what they put on their applications. So I think it's perfectly fine for us to discuss what if this works for everyone or for the majority, or if we want to look at another time or date.
Sarah, would you like me, or would you like to send out any of those meeting tools that would allow people to specify what times were available, and then we
Yeah, I
can.
think a doodle would be great. I sit on a statewide biomass utilization work group that's hosted by DEQ, and that's this block from 3 to 5. This month it happened to get postponed, so that worked well, but going forward I have to choose between the two. So if folks are up for a doodle poll to look for some different times, I'd appreciate it.
All right, that sounds good. Are there any objections to handling this menu item or this agenda item that way, so that we can each specify what times we're available and we don't take up a meeting time to deliberate on our availabilities? Okay, then let's do it that way, and I'll look forward to receiving that from you, Sarah. Thank you. I had not seen this far down on the agenda, so I already brought up Lumio out of the agenda order. And then a review of actual charter. The questions, does it need to be updated how we all reviewed the current charter? And the recent issue that, so in terms of weighing whether the charter needs to be updated, there was the recent issue for any of us watching the city council meetings. We saw that come up, that there were different interpretations around the part that mentions that the council president would automatically fill the mayor's seat in a vacancy, of whether that was the correct interpretation of the language. So that would be one instance for specifying in the contract or in the charter. There's another potential issue in the charter, but I'm seeing Councilor Kenyon, your hand being raised for this.
Actually, it's not for this. I forgot to mention something in the previous,
Yes.
which was about our timeline. I just wanted to say that while it would be ideal if we could rush through this and get this on the ballot for this coming November, that would be, optimal. But I'm just assuming it's going to take us more time than that. So I was going to research whether or not it's okay to add something like this to a May ballot. And if not, it might actually be even further down the road to actually get it on the ballot. And so I just want to make sure people are aware that this could take us some time.
If I can respond to that, that was my general question in this whole process. I believe from things I've heard previously that if we can get it on the November ballot, we don't have to pay the extra associated fees. But if it's going to go on a May ballot or a special ballot, that could be a significant cost to the city, which we know we are strapped for cash right now. And so that was really kind of my general question. Are we, everyone as a group, committed to putting in a ton of time and also public outreach for any proposed changes before November? And is that realistic? Or are we willing to advise the city take on additional costs for whatever our consensus is as we reach the end of this process? I think it's a discussion that we do need to have. Maybe if we are realistic that November is probably not going to happen and there's a lot of other more pressing issues facing our city right now, we could pace this group out at a slower pace and maybe have meetings every other month or quarterly, knowing that we're looking at a more long-term solution. And when I say that, I read that resource that came out, the Charter Commission's document, and that's some of the questions that asked up front. Are any of these fixes that we're feeling we need, are there things we can do in the interim that could fix those problems until we can do a full-scale review and then take it to the voters to update the charter? So those are some of the things that were going on in my mind, and I'd be curious to hear other people's thoughts about the timeline.
Great. Let's open the floor for that. Feel free to to actually, if let's do a round for that. When I'm calling on people in a round, you'll always hear me call one name and then another name so that you know you're coming up next. I find that facilitates being able to pay more undivided attention to the person who's currently speaking. So Sue Cathcart, and then Trudy, you'll be next.
Thanks, Matthew. I agree with Sarah that it might be advantageous to save the city the money. And so if it's, if we know that we're not going to be ready for the November ballot, then why not pace ourselves a little bit more slowly so that we can save the money?
Hi, Trudy speaking. I think that
Yes, one moment, Trudy. Trudy, and then Jan Hooker, you'll be next.
Okay. I think that the pacing is definitely good, especially since we need to be paying a close attention to the language being used, and things of that nature. I had notes, but somewhere they floated away. But I definitely there were some focal points that I had, and I think that they would work out with the pacing a lot better than a rush. Thank you.
Sure, Jan Hooker, and then Chris.
I honestly think Sarah is 100% correct. This is something we've all been talking about and know that we need to do, but if we rush through stuff, we're going to miss something. So I truly believe that she is correct. Thank you.
Chris, and then Jen Christensen.
Which Chris?
You.
Okay. I feel at a loss because I'm not aware that I'm not aware of what we're charged with looking at. The things mentioned in the minutes are about language and the mayor and succession and all of that. I don't want to assume that that's what it is we're going to take on. I would love to know what we're charged with. And I'm all about taking as much time as we need to get there. I'm from a Quaker background, so I'm all about consensus, and consensus takes as long as it takes. Okay.
And I'm trying to remember whom I said would be next.
I'm Jan Christensen.
Yes, there we go. There you are.
Is there someone after me you want to announce?
Yes, I'll go after you, and then
Okay.
I'm
just thinking that I would rather not have a meeting every other month. I think it's important to do more, like at least once a month, and not to drag it out. There's a lot of important things I think we need to discuss and learn and all of that. So taking our time, yes, but not taking so much time we're dragging our feet, or just every other month just doesn't sound doable to me. This is important things that we need to deal with. That's it.
And then I'll speak, and Councilor Kenyon, you'll be next. I absolutely am on the same page of deliberation takes as long as deliberation takes, because we want to make sure that we do this right. I do not think that if we need to constrain our speaking with one another to the meeting, that we will make a November deadline. However, pending the City Council's decision tomorrow, I do think that if we can make use of one or more tools that can facilitate public asynchronous discussion, not making decisions asynchronously, but the surfacing questions and providing relevant links for one another to be familiar with prior to our meetings together. and being able to answer one another's questions prior to our meetings together, then we can show up and make highly efficient use of our time and may actually make a November deadline. So it's, for me, a lot in terms of the time frame is riding on the city council's decision on that. Jack and Councillor Kenyon.
Okay, one thing I'd like to add about all of this is the November ballot. In order to have something on the ballot, you have to have it approved by the attorney, the language approved 90 days prior to the election actually happening. So we would be more looking at an early August deadline of completion, including the attorney's part in it. Now, we did discuss this once with Brian, our city administrator, in an admin meeting, and he didn't think the process for the attorney would take too long. In other words, maybe just a few weeks versus months. So, realistically, if we did get through all of this by the end of June or the middle of July, it is possible. But like Matt mentioned, that's probably going to be hinged on the council discussion tomorrow. I am now planning on adding the Google Docs option to the council discussion. And we'll go from there. I agree with everyone, as long as time it takes is what we need to do. And for the benefit of Chris, is it Chris W? I wanted to say that I think what we'll end up doing in this committee is literally reviewing the entire charter, decide, does this paragraph make sense? Does it need to be changed? Does it not need to be changed? And move on to the next section. And I'm not exactly sure how we're going to break all that up, but we are literally going to review the entire charter to decide if it needs anything edited.
Matt, this is Brian Ketchen at City Hall. I don't
Thank you,
can't raise my hand here, but just for the group as we go around the horn, Chris Harder is actually sitting here with me because he was having some technical difficulties. So he's also here to offer his opinion.
Yeah, I have a couple things that I'd like to say too. I don't think one meeting a month is really going to cut it. And secondly, I would want to know if we could change that in your charter review subcommittee agenda so that we could actually have more than one meeting a month. And I would also like to say that maybe we should have work sessions that are a little bit longer than an hour and a half. I just don't think we can accomplish the amount of stuff that you're talking about here. And I don't even have a clue right now at this point in time, what exactly do you want to review on this charter? And then I have another question too, and this is actually for Sarah as a follow-up. They're talking about, Don, that we're gonna have to have this reviewed by an attorney. Now, can Sarah, can you do the review on this? Or would it be a conflict of interest for you to do that because you're on the committee?
Sarah.
Sorry, I'm on mute. I think it'd be best to have the city attorneys review anything that we come to decide.
That'd be like the city attorney, Sarah?
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely.
Thank you for answering that. I appreciate it. So I don't know what the group's opinion is on having more than one meeting a month and or a work session, like maybe we could get together one afternoon for like 3 or 4 hours maybe and knock some of this out and get it done. Especially if you're going to push for the November election. And if you have to have it all done 90 days beforehand, like I said, I think we need to have either more than one meeting a month or a group work session on that one meeting a month and just change the times. I don't know how that'll work out. I'm retired, so my schedule as a retiree is pretty full all the time, you know, but I can modify that at any time. Anyway, that's all I have to put in right now at this point in time.
Okay, so is there anyone else that I've missed in this round? My dog wants to speak her mind. Brian, were you wanting to say anything as well?
Yeah, you know, that in discussion with the admin committee, as Councilor Kenyon mentioned, that the idea would be that we read through the entire charter and focus on things that we think need changing. So it is a big project. Is it impossible to get to November? I don't think so. You know, if you work hard enough, you can get it done. But it is going to take some dedication from a large group. So the time we choose to meet is going to be important. That's all I have.
Sorry,
Okay.
folks, I hate to do this, but I got to jump off. So I'll just catch up with wherever you end on this, and I appreciate the discussion. And I will send out the doodle poll or whatever handy tool for us to find a better meeting time.
Thank you, Sarah. And would you also put a question about meeting frequency on that poll so that we'll be able to chime in on that?
Sure can.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
So that we've covered the scope of what we'll be doing as a subcommittee of reviewing the actual charter. And then there's the general question of how shall we proceed all together, reading sections ahead and coming prepared to discuss those sections, break up into subgroups for sections. Sue, you have your hand raised about this one. Check.
Well, I was wondering if I might offer, I like the idea of what Chris said about having some continuity of not meeting every other month, of meeting monthly. Or and is it possible that if we decide to meet monthly and we don't make the deadline for the November election, if it takes a little bit longer, why not just hold on to our results until the next November?
Councilor Kenyon, would it be the next November or would it be the one after that? Would there be a 2-year gap or one?
There would be a 2-year gap, but I am going to contact Lane County to find out, you know, if there's a cost for the May election or not, because that's another possibility.
All right,
And I'll bring that information back to our meeting, our next meeting.
Thank you. So in terms of the how should we proceed, I can say that I'm willing to donate toward having a Lumio platform that would make public and thread the discussions. I've actually already set up a template for that Councilor Kenyon, you're welcome to share with City Council so that they could see what that sort of thing would look like. One thing that we have here is breaking into subgroups for sections. I'd like us to do a brief round on breaking into subgroups. That approach would entail different people looking at different sections of the charter. Trudy, do you want to speak to that option? And then Jan Christensen. Check.
Sure. I'm the subgrouping. I'm thinking how that would go about if maybe if each administrative committee would host a subgroup. Is that what you're asking? Just to clarify.
This has been floated as a way to accomplish more in a shorter amount of time. It has the advantage that our subcommittee would get through the entire charter, but it has the disadvantage that not each person or on the charter subcommittee would be looking at every section and dialoguing on every section. So the potential to give voice to the interrelationships between subsections of the charter that you've read, if you are wanting to say, hey, this and not that, that could be more challenging. Does that clarify what this question is about?
Yeah, I'm just thinking that I think with work sessions that it should go along a lot quicker if we did have work sessions and operated in that manner. Thank you.
Okay, whom did I say was next? Jan Christensen, great. Jan and then Sue.
Okay. I don't think I would like to be left out of conversations on different sections. I think I would rather it be everybody's involved in all areas. That's my opinion.
Thank you, Sue, and then Chris W.
I think breaking into subgroups would be a good way to move things along quite a bit faster. I'd be okay with that too.
Chris W. and then the other Chris.
I would agree with that. I like the idea of having somebody on the committee who knows more about it than I do, just for guidance sake. That I think that probably all of the above in terms of meeting all together, having work sessions, breaking into small groups, anything to save time and get us to where we want to.
Your mute button got pressed, so we cannot hear you right now.
Are you looking for Chris Harder?
I didn't know if Chris W. was finished.
I am. I'm sorry. I am done.
Oh, okay. Then yes, Chris H.
Yeah, I don't really have a problem with breaking down into subgroups. But I think before a final decision is made on it, we ought to all sit down together and go over those decisions or the thought processes on those subgroups. I think we ought to all get together and go over that information when the subgroups are done. So that everybody has an idea and is able to review the proposed changes to the charter. And that's all I've got to say about that.
Thank you, Chris H. Jan, and then Councillor Kenyon. Jan, are you with us on this?
I think you're looking for Jan Hooker. I already made my opinion.
Yes, Jan Hooker, are you with us on this?
Maybe she lost connection.
That's a possibility. Councillor Kenyon, do you want to speak to this? And then Brian.
Sure. I actually like all of the ideas so far. If you had asked me first, I would have said I'd prefer us all to work together through the whole entire thing, but I like the input that different people have said, particularly Chris, the one who's at City Hall, who mentioned if we did do subgroups, we should definitely all get back together at the end and review everything. I definitely like that idea. Could go either way. However, I also wanted to mention that shoot, I lost my train of thought. So if you don't mind, if I come back in just a second after, if it looks like Jan Hooker's back, could I come back after her?
That's just fine with me. Jan Hooker, and then we'll come back to Councillor Kenyon.
Hi, sorry about that. I keep getting kicked off. I am fine either way. I do think that, just my opinion, I think each one of us, if we're going to be on that committee, I think it would behoove all of us if we haven't already, is to read the charter ourselves on our own free time. Then we'd kind of have an idea of maybe what we had that we would like to change, if anything. Just
Oh, her connection.
So Jan, your connection appears frozen. I was hearing the idea that if we all read it independently, we would have an idea of what we might like to change, if anything. And maybe you'll be able to pick up there when we if your connection is restored. Councillor Kenyon, do you remember what you were?
Yeah, and I made notes. Jen brings up a good point about reading it, but also anyone in the community who's been a counselor in the past, and we have a lot of past counselors in the community, are excellent people to reach out to ask them, like, while you were a counselor, was there any significant issues that came up that, you know, question the charter, to give me an idea of what I could really focus on in the charter. Also, I wanted to mention that we do need to do either some kind of poll for the community or some town hall meetings to get input outside of just this group. And then my last thing I wanted to say was something that we talked about in the administration committee, is that as far as the actual charter review, I'm going to back out unless people have specific questions for me that want clarification on, maybe something current or past in council that they want to inquire about. I'm happy to participate. But as far as like throwing out my ideas of what I think need to be changed in the charter, I'm going to refrain from that, because I'm a city councilor and I want everyone here to feel free to say whatever you want about what you think should be in the charter. I don't want to be my being here to make anyone hesitant about speaking their mind about what should be in the charter. So just wanted to let everyone know that.
Okay. I don't know if there's anything we might be able to say to shift your mind on that. As I really appreciate having a voice from the city council here to be able to raise real-time questions of, hey, if this change were made, how can you see that having impacted the way that things have proceeded in the past or may proceed currently? But that is another, you bring up something that we can at least revisit if your mind is not made up on that, or how firm are you on that?
So I wonder if I didn't make it really clear. I'm definitely happy to be someone to bounce your questions off. Oh no, can you hear me? Okay, I got a message that my internet was unstable. I'm happy to answer anyone's questions and be as available for you guys as possible. But what I don't want to do is come to you with all that I think need to be changed about the charter. I want to see the community, you know, look into it and make those decisions and bring ideas. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Brian, you were next in the round.
Thanks. I think breaking the subcommittee up into groups to review parts of the charter could be beneficial as long as the readout to the entire subcommittee is very structured and actually specifies exactly what they want to change and exactly why they want to change it, and maybe give examples. That way, it will accelerate the process when they do read out to the entire subcommittee with their results. So that's kind of my thoughts.
So the possibility of groups, as long as it's very structured in the final readout.
Yeah, when the whole subcommittee is hearing the recommended changes for that particular section.
Okay. And here we come to another difference between how sociocracy generally proceeds and how Robert's Rules of Order generally proceed. In sociocracy, what a facilitator is attending to is potential objections that even one person may have raised that that would not be attended to by presenting or consenting to a majority proposal. So it may have been you, Jen Christensen, who was mentioning what I was hearing as a potential objection. So what I'm hearing is two different sort of potential objections. One is if we proceed ahead as a committee, given that everyone is going to be reading the charter on our own, if we proceed ahead as a full committee trying to work through all of it together, it may simply take too much time, especially if we're trying to meet a deadline. And there are some other potential ways forward around that. The other objection was, but I want to have a say in more than whatever one subsection that I've been assigned, and that sense of wanting to have a say in some of the in some of potentially the interrelationships between the subsections. I'm not sure how that wanting to have a say could be accommodated by the proposal of breaking things into subsections, because it's almost necessarily so that if someone's voice is not part of the various subsections, that they're not going to have a say in highlighting interrelationships between the sections until a later read. Is that concern? Jan Christensen, were you the one who brought that up with the I was wanting to have a say? Does my phrasing of that capture your concern there, or would you like to put that in different language?
No, I think you're hitting it. I know it could take a long time, but I'm sure that there's parts of the charter that would go really quickly, I would hope, and no obvious changes or whatever. But then there's probably some that are like, yeah, we really have to work on that one. Mm-hmm. And I think on those ones, everybody should have a voice. So if it can be split up where it's like not the big deal, let's just keep all that the same, then do that ahead of time. And I don't know how exactly you do that, but then the ones that are really rubbing people the wrong way, or there's a lot of issues with it, then I think the whole group should be a part of that. Mm-hmm. That's all. I'm for breaking it down into groups and getting it done quicker. It's just there's some that are hot topics, possibly, that I think everybody should be working on that together.
Okay. Since there is the question of how would we identify which of those may be hot topics before we would be assigning any breakout groups, I'm going to actually make a proposal that that we break the and I'm aware that we have 11 minutes left of our scheduled meeting time, that we first do a read through of a section or of the entire proposals or the entire charter, and begin to simply, as an exercise in self-discipline, raise questions that we have about what's there without making any suggested changes. So that we go through and we say, well, does this have that implication? Or, well, if this is the way that it's written, what about that? Not to say, I want to make sure that this is changed, but surfacing questions and making sure that we can route each other some resources to explore implications of what's in the charter could enable us then subsequently to make a determination about the extent to which breaking into subsections would still honor giving everyone a voice. How does that proposal sit with people? Again, the proposal is, let's first focus on questions and implications before making actually any suggested changes to the charter, because surfacing those questions and implications it may guide us in how we would form any breakout groups. I see two hands raised. Councillor Kenyon, I'll call on you first, and then Trudy Hammond, and then we'll go from there.
I just wanted to mention that with the limited amount of time that we have, I did like Chris Harder's earlier suggestion, like to have a big work session. And I'm wondering how the group feel about doing something like that in the future, maybe in the next few weeks, even like on a Saturday morning or something where we could do a couple of hours or even 3. I'd be okay with 3 or 4 hours, and just see how that goes for like making our master plan, how to really tackle all of this. And I also want to commend you, Matt. You're doing an excellent job. That's all I had.
Thank you, Councillor Kenyon. So that there is additionally floated the idea of a longer work session. So there's now 2 different ideas that you're welcome to respond to. The first is the self-discipline of only questions first, only implications first, not proposals for change, which could come in a second round of getting together. And then the second one is, do we want to attempt that review of questions and implications in a subsequent meeting, or do we want to be aiming soon for a work session together where we could look at a lot of that in a longer block of time? Trudy and then Sue.
Well, what I was thinking of throughout this discussion was, first of all, with everybody reading the charter, if we broke up into, say, ABC groups, and then ABC groups discussed what they have concerns about in that charter, then at a work session, all can come together and discuss those concerns, and then move on from there to an outline of possible changes, is what my thought was. Thank you.
Sue, and then Jan Christensen.
I'm also in agreement with what Chris said of breaking into the subcommittees and then bringing our findings back to the group, and then having the group review, the pros, the cons, and, giving, a digested version of what we see in each section. I like that idea. And I also like the idea of the breakout session of doing one soon and kind of sinking our teeth in and, wrapping our arms around the project, and then from there splitting off and then coming back together.
Okay. Jan, were you the one I called on next?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Chris H after you.
I'm for the breakouts, as long as somewhere along the process, whether it's in a work session or whenever, we all have a feeling like we've been able to have our 2 cents put in there.
Great. Chris H. and then Chris W.
Well, I'm hearing a lot of stuff. We're kind of going around in a circle there. And I don't think there's anything in what we've discussed tonight that prohibits anybody from reading the entire charter. And then, you know, if you want to break out into groups, that's fine. And like I said, once those groups get done, to bring it all back to the table and let everybody review what potential changes want to be made. And then make that decision as a large group or the entire group with regard to the charter. And again, like I said, I think we ought to have longer work sessions and meet more than once a month, if that's what it takes, especially if you want to try to get it on this November's ballot. And that's all I have to say.
Sounds good. And Brian.
You know, I'm supportive either way. There's a lot of ways to slice and dice it. I just think we need to come together and all just choose one.
Okay. And Chris W., I think I may have inadvertently skipped you there.
Listening to all of it,
We lost you. With
I'm sorry, together and pointed out things as a group. Then when we break into smaller groups, we have the idea of what was we were questioning, and then break into the small groups and then bring it all back together. That's it.
Okay. Chris, would you be able to, would you be willing to make a motion to that effect?
This, Chris?
Yes.
So moved. Let's start with all of us together going through the charter. And then with comments that would lead the subgroups into what it is we want to accomplish with our little subgroup. And then come back and report that. And
sounds reasonable.
good.
Do I have a second for that?
Can you repeat the motion, please? Because I couldn't.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure. The motion is that we would gather together as a group in a work session and explore any questions that we would read through the charter together and explore any questions that we have and potential implications, and that exploration could then guide the breaking into subgroups to explore potential changes, and that those potential changes would then be revisited as a whole group in another work session where we would all be able to hear the proposed changes and weigh in on the implication of those changes.
I would second that motion. This is Chris H.
Okay, so we have a second from Chris H. And do we have anyone who has anything to say as in terms of a reservation with that motion? I will actually voice a reservation with the motion, and again, I will deviate from Robert's Rules of Order given the size of our group and the limited time left on our scheduled agenda, which would be that we actually simply take the first part of the motion, Chris, which is that in a work session, we get together and raise questions. And then at that point, make a determination of whether we want to break into subgroups, because that way we're not committed to that course of action in a work group prior to actually being together and having read through the charter and raised questions about it. Would you be comfortable amending your proposal to only have that first part?
Absolutely.
Okay. Do I have the same second?
Okay, that Chris.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you. Everyone in favor of that by an aye?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any nays? Hearing none, the motion carries. And we have been talking about a work group and wanting to get together for that. Any objections to actually, Councillor Kenyon, you might be able to make the contact. There will be some sort of a poll being sent out about your availability for upcoming meetings. Any objections to having your availability for an upcoming work session also included in that poll? Okay. Hearing none, that will enable us to explore potential availabilities for work session. Councillor Kenyon, would you be able to relay that request?
Yes,
Please?
I certainly will.
Thank you. And with that, I think we've accomplished everything on our agenda with only 1 minute overtime. We can give ourselves a Zoom applause. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking forward to seeing you all.
Nice to meet you all.
Good meeting you all too.